Hey, what's up guys? Jake Tech here, and today I'm going to go ahead and get started on relocating all of our hardware from our previous water-cooled build, which was all in the Define R6 from Fractal Design, and we're going to be moving all that hardware into the Enthoo 719 from Phanteks. So this is going to be kind of a big project, so this is going to be the start of it. We are going to have to rebend all the rigid tubing eventually. Probably not going to get to that now because I did start this kind of late. So this is going to be the first video to this rebuild. I'm basically just going to be moving some of the main hardware into the new case, that being the motherboard and obviously the CPU and RAM that's already on it. Probably remount the blocks and of course put new thermal paste on our CPU. We're going to try and mount the radiators and the fans, and probably the reservoir pump and res combo will be mounting in there too. We're going to leave the rigid tube bends for another day because that will be the most time consuming part, more than likely. Another concern too is the power supply. I do have custom length cables for this case, so depending on if they work or not, we might use them. If they don't have the right length, probably just end up making new ones or extensions. So going over some of the hardware, a lot of it's going to be identical to what I had in this build because we're just transferring it over. Starting off with the motherboard, this is the Asus ROG Maximus 11 formula. Inside there we have a i7 8700K. We got 32 gigs of RAM. It's the G-Skills Trident Z. We're going to be mounting a GTX 1080 Ti for our graphics card. And as far as radiators go, we have some of the Coolstream series from EK. We have a 360 and a 280mm rad, and we'll be using the same pump and reservoir combo from EK. This is the Revo D5 pump, I believe, and it's a combo, so we have our pump built in with our reservoir. So pretty easy to mount and manage. Where we are changing up the hardware a little bit is the fans. I did keep some of the stock fans for the Fractal Design Define R6, and they're pretty low power, so I wanted to upgrade that a little bit, and that's really why I went with this upgrade, because I really wanted some increased cooling. So for the fans, we're upgrading to the Noctua. These are the NF F12s. We have 3 of those, and then we do have the NF F14s we'll be using for our 280. So these are their actual industrial grade fans. They're very high RPM. They run around 3000 RPM max. But yeah, they are super stout. You can just see how serious these are, even by the PWM cable, which is pretty significant. But I've used them in the mini ITX build that we have, and they work really good. I know some people probably won't like these fans just because they are a little bit noisier, but I think in this case they'll do just fine, and especially too since we have some radiators that we really need some air push through, it's good to have that higher RPM. So with all that being said guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. so we got all of our hardware mounted. I kind of skipped around a little bit. Just this week I've been kind of picking at this thing a little bit here and there. Ran into a few issues which I'm going to talk about right now. But as I said, we got all of our stuff mounted. We have our radiators, fans, our pump and reservoir combo, of course our motherboard and all its components, mounted the graphics card. And then we also did some cable management around back with the pre-existing wires from the case, and then any RGB wiring that we have going towards the back. So that's what we have done so far. So one challenge we ran into right off the bat, which I did not consider when starting the rebuild on this, is when I had this all in the Define R6, I had our 280mm rad up front on the Define R6, and its width is 140mm. So I had the bracket for our pump res combo for that radiator. Well, I didn't even think about it. We are mounting the 360mm rad on the front of this case, which is only 120mm wide, so that made our bracket just way too wide for mounting this pump and reservoir. So what we ended up doing was making our own bracket. And luckily, where I work right next to an aircraft maintenance shop, and thank you to my friend Drew, who probably is going to be watching this video. He hooked me up with the materials and some of the stuff to sand it down, but we just took a piece of thin sheet metal, cut it with some tin snips to get kind of this same general shape of the EK bracket. And it doesn't look nearly as good as this, but it does work really well, and it's very discreet. So, and you guys will see in some of the clips how it looks in there. But yeah, we just did that, and then went at it with a Dremel a little bit to smooth out everything, and then painted it black and mounted up really nice. So I was actually surprised how good it looks in the case, or seeing it out of the case and without the pump on it, it really doesn't look that good. So, but I digress, because I am not a professional fab guy. So moving on. So far this case has been really convenient to work in. There's just so much room being a full tower case, and Phanteks really set it up nice to where everything is located very conveniently, and it makes a lot of sense when you're putting stuff in it. I'm really happy with the way that the graphics card mounted up. As you guys will probably see in some of the clips, it's very flat, it lays nice and straight, because this case does come with an anti-sag bracket which just goes right around back, and you can actually adjust it from the outside, and that way it pulls up those tabs that sit on the back of the card to where you can adjust it to where it sits nice and flat. So that's a great feature from Phanteks, a really nice little accessory to include. So the next video and our next big challenge for this build is going to be bending the rigid tubing. I'm not exactly sure on loop order. I've got a couple ideas in my mind that I was thinking of for this build. I'm going to try to keep it fairly simple. I'm thinking just going from the pump to the GPU, from the GPU straight to the CPU. Those are all pretty well in line with each other, and then going up to this 280, from the 280 to the 360. That's one I had in mind. I know in the last build I did split up radiators in between components, but as I've seen from other videos and stuff, and as I've mentioned before on the channel, that there are tests out there that prove that the loop order doesn't necessarily matter. You won't have other components heating each other up. Your components will just heat up the loop as a whole. So depending on the fittings I have, I'm going to see about doing a rigid tube bend from the top of the reservoir to our fill port up top in this case. I think what I'm going to end up doing is I'm just going to have our drain valve coming right off the pump, and when I'm not doing any service to this, I'll just have it, stationary. I'll have our valve right here, and then from there I'm thinking about connecting a piece of soft tubing to that valve, and then I can connect it here and then go straight to the bottom where our drain valve is on this case. So as it sits now, our drain isn't in the lowest point of the loop, which would make draining it kind of inconvenient. But once you add this tube going to the bottom, that'll then make it the lowest point in the loop, making draining it much easier. So I'm really hoping doing this will make maintenance much easier in the future, because this will give us a point at the very top of the loop where we have air coming in, and then our drainage will be at the very bottom of the loop, making a nice easy drain out. So something new that I'm trying out on this rebuild also is mounting our 120mm fans on the inside of the case rather than on the very front of the case. I've always mounted them on the front side of the radiators, just because my thought was they'd have easier access to pulling fresh air in. But I've seen a lot of people put them on the back side of their radiators, especially if they're RGB and they want to get more of that lighting, because they're pretty much pointless if you have RGB fans on the front unless you got a piece of glass there. So I'm going to try them like this, just see what kind of performance we can get. And these are very high powered fans, so I imagine they'll be able to intake still quite a bit of air through the radiator, and then we'll have very high airflow being on the inside of the case, pushing air through. So I'm not really sure if it'll make a difference. I know this is just kind of trying something new for me on the build. So as far as our cooling configuration goes, we have our three 120mm fans on the front, which are going to serve as intake. So we'll have fresh air coming in this way. And then kind of my thinking always is having the top left for exhaust, maybe top and back. So we have two 140mm fans on our 280mm rad up top. So that's going to serve as exhaust. And I always set up my builds like this too, just because hot air rises naturally. So having that extra help up here to pull it out will definitely improve cooling, in my opinion. So it's a pretty simple configuration. I kind of wanted to avoid having any sort of radiator at the very bottom, even though this case is very capable of that. So having a radiator that low in the loop when it comes to maintenance might be a pain to get that fluid out if you intend on fully draining the system, just because it's really hard to get any sort of drainage lower than that. So you'll have a lot of fluid that'll probably get kind of stuck in there, and might be an issue trying to get that fluid out. So I think that's going to wrap up this video, guys. This is just kind of a little build vlog and me just kind of taking you through the process of rebuilding this water-cooled system and just giving you an insight on kind of things that I'm seeing and just the process of doing it. And we're kind of just seeing how a build goes in the Phanteks Enthoo 719. So far I'm really enjoying it. It's a great case to build in. If you guys have any questions on the case or anything else, make sure to leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to try and answer anything that you guys have. So make sure and stay tuned for the next video, as that will be the video that we'll be doing our rigid tube bends. You guys will get to see me bend some of the PETG tubing and how I do some of my loop planning, which I kind of went over already in this video, but you'll actually get to see it in action. So if you guys want to see more PC build videos and other tech related videos, make sure to subscribe. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.